The Big Bang was the moment when the universe began as a tiny, dense fireball that exploded. Some 9 billion years later, our Mother Earth was formed when gravity pulled in swirling gas and dust. Over the eons, Mother Earth has been moving through the creation, encountering different energy fields and adapting along the way. Mother Earth spins on her axis as she's spinning through her solar system. And our solar system spins through the Milky Way galaxy. And all of the galaxies in our neighborhood are rushing towards a region in space roughly 150 million light years away from us called the Great Attractor. And in each new place and space that we travel, it has its own unique energy. The aim of this podcast is to briefly stop the motion of Mother Earth and look for clues on how our current position in space is affecting our planet and life on her surface. I'm Dr. Lauren Cielo, and this is what Ascension looks like. Hi everyone. In this episode of What Ascension Looks Like, we focus on us, the Homo sapien. As in all episodes, we'll look at the history, the current state, and the likely future of all of our topics. So let's begin with our past. If you remember high school biology, you'll remember words like phylum, genus, and species. And these words are used to classify all living organisms. The genus Homo comes from the Latin word for man. This genus is often called human. While there have been arguably 21 species of humans that have inhabited planet Earth, the only surviving species is Homo sapien, which means wise or knowledgeable man. It's believed the first primitive Homo sapiens evolved from Homo erectus 300,000 years ago in Africa. Their skulls were less round and more elongated than ours, suggesting their brains were different. We'll call them Homo sapien version 1.0. They're followed by what's called early modern Homo sapien, at least 200,000 years ago. Early modern humans had relatively slender skeletons and teeth, with a vertical forehead and non-projecting face, and the presence of a chin. Some of the distinctive characteristics of early modern human behavior include more effective hunting technologies, including tools made of bone, ivory, and antler, the use of symbolic elements such as ochre and personal decorations, and ceremonial burials. We'll call them version 2.0. Versions 1 and 2 interbred with archaic humans such as Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, and Denisovans. Quite a genetic cocktail. This brings us to modern human. This happened 100,000 years ago. Homo sapien version 3.0. Us. One of the main characteristics of Homo sapiens and our ancestors is how we care for one another. It seems what really separates us from other animals is how we act towards one another. Researchers from the University of York discovered archaeological evidence that early modern humans in Europe routinely cared for the injured or infirmed. remains revealed how a child with a congenital brain abnormality was not abandoned, but lived until 5 or 6 years old. The evidence also showed how a Neanderthal with a withered arm, deformed foot, and blindness in one eye was cared for perhaps as long as 20 years. In early modern humans, starting 120,000 years ago, compassion was extended to strangers, animals, objects, and abstract concepts. Dr. Penny Spikins, who led the study, said, "Compassion is perhaps the most fundamental human emotion. It binds us together and can inspire us, but it's also fragile and elusive." So for the purpose of this podcast, we could summarize the history of Homo sapien this way. 300,000 years ago, humans evolved into primitive Homo sapiens. 200,000 years ago, we changed into early modern Homo sapiens. And 100,000 years ago, we became us. And one of the defining features is our ability to exhibit compassion and empathy. Now that we understand how we used to be, let's take a look at where we are today. And let's stick with the human characteristics of compassion and empathy for others for a moment, since this is what separates us from other animals. In an unpublished study in 2018, participants were first asked whether they considered themselves very conservative or very liberal on a scale from 1 to 7. Then they were asked to report how empathetic they felt towards different groups. The liberal study subjects more frequently reported feeling tenderness towards less fortunate people in general, beyond those in their family. Conservatives tended to agree with statements like, "I often feel tender, concerned feelings for my family members who are less fortunate than me." Conservatives were also more likely to tell the researchers that they had more empathy for family members over friends, endorsed their fellow countrymen over foreigners, and took the side of humans over non-human subjects. Because the ability to empathize and feel compassion is the trait that makes us human, it's an important clue for our continued evolution and ascension. And we've learned that there are differences within our species. For some Homo sapiens in today's world, it's easy to hate others who are deemed not to be part of one's circle of compassion. It's okay to take immigrant children from their parents and put them in cages. It's okay to pay certain groups less money for the same work. It's okay to bully minorities, call them names, and ridicule them. It's even okay to create and use weapons to kill other Homo sapiens. In fact, the followers of the world's religions that often preach compassion, love, and empathy are sometimes the very people who separate themselves out from the collective human family by only being able to feel compassion for their own families and sometimes muster a bit for their friends. Let's take a further look at the current state of Homo sapiens worldwide. The United Nations estimates, as of March 2022, the current world population is 7.9 billion. Many scientists think the Earth has a maximum carrying capacity of 9 to 10 billion people, and we should reach 1.9 billion people by 2050. With such a crowded planet, we can use all the compassion and empathy we can get. But compassion and empathy doesn't pay the bills. That is to say that Homo sapien requires food, shelter, and clothing to survive. Presently, 33% of the world's population does not have access to adequate food. 21% of people do not have access to the least basic water service or do not have safe water to drink. In addition, 3% of the world's population is homeless either permanently or as refugees. As far as money goes, it's estimated that there are $40 trillion in circulation, while the richest 10% of people own a considerable 76% of the world's wealth. Meanwhile, the poorest half only owe 2%. Even with all these discrepancies, we are living longer and constantly acquiring more knowledge. Since we began measuring the average life expectancy in 1950, it has risen from 47 to 73 years. In regards to acquiring knowledge, now everything we know doubles every 13 months. And we are quickly on our way, with the help of the internet, to doubling of knowledge every 12 hours. To put that into context, in 1900, human knowledge doubled approximately every 100 years. Have you ever wondered how a medical doctor or quantum physicist could possibly learn everything in their field in 5 to 10 years of advanced education? I mean, by the time they finish, they'd have to begin all over. In addition, abrupt climate change, pandemic, and war currently engulf our planet, pushing Homo sapien closer and closer to the brink of huge shifts. So, what might happen going forward for Homo sapien? Remember, Homo sapien evolves every 100,000 years or so. So it seems like we're due for an upgrade. But without other types of humans to breed with, how and why would we continue to evolve? Will there be a Homo sapien version 4.0? If so, what would they be like? One school of thought suggests a new Homo Luminous. It's basically a Homo sapien with a light body instead of a dense physical body. The term comes from anthropologist and writer Alberto Villoldo. In his book, The Four Insights, he writes, "We're going to take a quantum leap in what we're becoming, moving from Homo sapien to Homo luminous. That is, beings with the ability to perceive the vibration and light that make up the physical world at a much higher level. We'll take a biological quantum leap within our own lifetimes, and the physical, emotional, and spiritual traits we acquire will be passed on to our children and our children's children." So the term luminous comes from Latin word lum, which means light. So how could our understanding of physics account for the matter that makes up our physical body becoming luminous or made of light? Well, E equals mc squared after all. Einstein's theory of relativity states that energy, including light, is intertwined with mass or matter. Collisions in a particle accelerator have proven that when two accelerated photons smash together, they can produce matter and antimatter, or electrons and positrons. So it seems plausible that the opposite could be true, namely that matter could be converted into light. But it would take a ton of energy to do so. This isn't very likely unless the environment of Earth changes completely. And more importantly, could our bodies even stay alive under these circumstances? Another possibility of Homo sapien version 4.0 might be Homo alienness, where we interbreed with species from outer space. Oh my gosh, if I had a penny for every YouTube video on this subject, I'd be rich. But logically, it seems doubtful that two different species could successfully mate and produce healthy offspring. It does happen, rarely here on Earth, like with horses and donkeys. If the father's a horse and the mother's a donkey, their offspring is called a hinny. If the mother's a horse and the father's a donkey, it's called a mule. Both are infertile. In bears, when a grizzly bear and a polar bear mate, the hybrid is called a pizzly, and they do seem to be fertile, but they're very rare. It has to do with the differences in genetic makeup. Horses and donkeys' DNA contrasts more than grizzly and polar bear DNA. Thinking of how different Homo sapiens' DNA would be from an alien's makes it seem pretty far-fetched, if not impossible. Maybe we'll integrate with computers and artificial intelligence and become Homocyberneticus. Now, that one seems scientifically possible to me. In short, it's the convergence of neuroscience and nanotechnology, where electronic devices are artificially introduced into a normal Homo sapien, which are capable of directly interfacing with the central nervous system. While nanomedicine, as it's called, is still in its infancy stages, there are current applications being developed. Drug delivery, diagnostic techniques, antibacterial treatments, wound treatments, and cell repair. But this wouldn't really create a new Homo sapien 4.0 unless these parents could reproduce with the nanotech passing on to their offspring. This brings us to the version I think is most plausible, Homodelectus, or man of choice, as the Latin word delexus means selection. According to choiceos.com, Homo sapiens have progressed from little more than a savaging animal driven predominantly by instinct to human beings capable of controlling their behavior and actions to an extraordinary degree. We only lose our control under intoxication, drugs, or extreme emotional stress. And 96 to 99% of the time, 96 to 90% of people fully control every action and reaction so that we can function together as societies. The next evolutionary step of Homo sapien is to become not only a being that can control its actions and behavior, but a being who can control its emotions, thoughts, automatic reactions, and functions of our body by leaping from the thinking human being to the human being of choice, full choice, not only of what we do, but of what we think, feel, what our bodies do, and how they function. Human beings in control of our subconscious and therefore of everything inside us. Beings with complete choice over our perceptions. So, from my point of view, this might be the perfect description of Homo sapien version 4.0. This is really another way of saying spirit having dominion over body, or having the ability to control our lower three chakras. The first chakra is the survival chakra. It's all about procuring food, shelter, and clothing. The second chakra is all about sex and emotion. And the third chakra is ego and competition. Having the ability to control or select how these chakras act and react would be a big game changer here on Earth. Less greed, dominance, and violence, and more compassion and empathy. And yet another way of describing this is to release the lowest vibrating energy and information in our body, chakras, and aura, which is the very definition of ascension, the theme of this entire podcast. Let's go back to the study on liberals and conservatives. Can you decide, select, to offer compassion and empathy to all living beings, even those outside your circle of family, friends, and countrymen? If you can, in all probability, you're well on your way to evolving into a Homodelectus. Just the fact that you're watching this podcast shows that you're interested in trying. So, how does one release the lowest vibrating energy, not just in their lower three chakras, but in all of them? Can we just mentally choose to do this? I don't think so. The issue is metaphysics. By this I mean the energy and information in our body, chakras, and aura. And we often get this energy and information installed in our energy field to small children. For instance, when I was raised in the 1960s, my parents used guilt, shame, violence, and the threat of violence to teach me how to be a functional adult. These traits are programmed into me. To help release them, I've done a ton of energy work. If we just try to mentally or emotionally choose compassion and empathy, it won't always work because the old energy and information is still in our field. It has to be removed. Otherwise, we'll still lose control under intoxication, drugs, or extreme emotional stress. A good resource that might help you release your programming is located on the internet at goldenrosepsychic.com/current events. This is a free meditation group for light workers who meet each week to help guide our planet and the Homo sapiens living on her to ascend more rapidly and with less struggle. First, we do energy work to release our programming, and then we offer the same healing to everyone. The intent of the group is to help the most people the most, and you're invited to join. Even if you can't make the live meditation, if you register, I'll email you the audio playback each week. There is a new, bright future ahead for the evolving human, and we can become Homo sapien version 4.0, our best version yet, and live into our full potential with ease, grace, and a whole lot of fun. And there are ways to help it along. I hope you enjoyed this episode of What Ascension Looks Like, and thanks so much for watching. I'm Dr. Cielo, and until our next episode, we'll call that a healing.